Today we're going to cover the periods of history in the early humans unit. We're going to talk about several topics that include the Paleolithic period, the Neolithic period, the Ice Ages, Lucy, and the civilization characteristics, or what a civilization must have to be considered a civilization. The first topic that we're going to start with today is Lucy. Lucy is the oldest human-like skeleton ever found. She is believed to be 3 to 4 million years old. She was found in Africa on November 24th, 1974, in the modern-day country of Ethiopia. We're going to move on to probably the most famous event that most people relate early humans with, the Ice Ages. Now, there are 3 to 4 Ice Ages over a span of 1.7 million years. It ended about 10,000 years ago. There was not one big Ice Age. There was a series of smaller Ice Ages that happened over a long period of time. Now, it says 10,000 years ago. They don't have an exact year. Like they don't know if it ended in 1950 BC. They just don't know. They didn't write anything down. Researchers are doing the best they can with trying to figure out the exact year. But for this purpose today, we're going to say 10,000 years ago. Now, we're going to move on with the periods of history in the early humans unit. We're going to start today with Paleolithic. Paleolithic begins with the human beginnings to 10,000 BCE. Now, what does BCE stand for? BCE does not stand for before Christ, whatever. It actually stands for before Common Era. Now, BCE and BC mean just about the same thing, but the only thing that you're going to change is instead of the C meaning Christ, the C means common. So before Common Era. Paleolithic period existed with nomads. Nomads were people who moved from place to place when their food supply ran out, when the weather got so bad that they had to move, or when another group tried to invade and they had to leave to try to get away from that group. They moved in groups of 20 to 30 people. They stayed together. If one person wanted to move, it didn't happen that way. Everybody moved together or no one moved at all. Paleolithic also had hunters and gatherers. Remember what hunters and gatherers are. Males hunted for the food in the morning, for the week, for the month. They ate everything. The women gathered at the same time, whether it be leaves off of trees, berries, whatever they could find around their area, the women gathered it. Now the Paleolithic eventually merged into the Neolithic. The Neolithic is also known as the New Stone Age. It existed from about 9,000 BCE, or before Common Era, to 4,500 BCE. It is a shift from the hunters and gatherers in the Paleolithic period to more farming and to more agriculture. In the Neolithic period, permanent settlements begin to appear. The first cities begin to appear. The first towns begin to appear. It also was the establishment of social classes. Lower class, upper class, middle class. Those social classes began to emerge. We'll talk about that later. Women's role in the Neolithic era began to decline. Men began to take the lead, began to do everything that was responsible around the camp, began to take a role in telling others what they were supposed to and what they were not supposed to do. And men were in charge. Women basically took a back seat. Neolithic era is also known for what it did with advancements. They came up with an irrigation system. They also came up with an advanced burial site. It was no more just letting the dead body rot. It was actually, let's dig a hole or let's build something for that person. They also came up with a calendar for planting and harvesting, basically telling them when they needed to water, when they needed sunlight, when they needed to plant certain crops. They also came up with advancements in metal tools, primarily something called a plow. Now, what the plow basically is you take an animal, whether that be an ox or horse, whatever animal that they had, usually horses, and they would basically strap a piece of metal behind it that would stick into the ground that they were farming, and it would basically knock up the dirt like a till today. They had plows up until 1960, 1970, and some farms today that do not have the money to buy a combine or to buy a tractor, some poor farms today still have plows. So don't think that the plows aren't around anymore. They are. Over a span of, 9,000, about 12,000 years, a plow has existed in some form. You also have metal weapons, first of its kind, to not guns, more like spears, more like bows and arrows, more like it made competition between the different groups of Neolithic period. They could begin battling it out over land supremacy. The final thing that we're going to talk about today is the characteristics that a civilization must have or must start off with to be considered a civilization. Whether that be Mesopotamia, whether that be Egypt, whether that be Greece, Rome, whatever civilization we are talking about throughout this unit, you got to remember these these places have to have these things first to be able to start their supremacy. You have to have a city. Let's talk about Greece. They have to have Athens first. You have to have a government, or you have to have organized religion, whether that be monotheistic, polytheistic for organized religion, or oligarchy, democracy, monarchy for government. You also have to have a system of writing, whether that be cuneiform, whether that be the Greek alphabet, the Roman alphabet, the American alphabet. You also have to have specialized jobs. Do they have business people? Do they have priests? Do they have traders? Do they have kings and queens? What kind of specialized jobs do they have? Social class structure. Is it upper class, middle class, lower class? Or is it untouchables, Brahmins, Sudras, Vaisyas, like we're going to talk about later? Are there advancements in technology? Is there the computer? Is there the iPad? Is there the Mac? Is there the pencil? Is there paper? What advancements in technology are there? You have to have these things first to be able to start a civilization. Let's review before we end. We've talked about the Neolithic period in history, 9,000 to 4,500 BCE. We talked about the Paleolithic period, human beginnings, to 10,000 BCE. We talked about the Ice Ages, 3 to 4, over a span of 1.7 million years into 10,000 BC. Lucy is the first human skeleton, found 1974 in Ethiopia or in Africa. This ends the eras of history of the early humans unit.